Dave, what would you say to people who are in, therapy for years and have trauma that can't get unlocked and they're, having to try psychedelics and ketamine now to unlock a state to be able to deal with some of that past trauma? Where does heavily meditated and the work that you're doing um, provide an alternative, if you will?
Sure. There was a time in my life where I was absolutely convinced that if I went to the gym 6 days a week for 90 minutes a day without fail and went on a low fat, low calorie diet, I would lose weight. I did this every day for 18 months straight, a year and a half. Only took Sundays off. At the end of that time, I still weighed 300 pounds and I still had a 46-inch waist. So, continuing to do something that doesn't work over and over and over again because you believe it works is simply self-deception. There's another influencer here in Austin. He's like, guys, I've done ayahuasca 87 times. I'm like, dude, when are you going to notice it's not working?
Yeah.
Right. And I've done it twice in my life. Right. And it's at the very end of the list of psychedelics in heavily meditated that you might consider. And it's the same thing with therapy. If you have to go every week to handle things, it's just a Band-Aid. And it's the same with most gurus. You go see your guru, they're on stage jumping up and down, flashing lights, and you feel great for 6 weeks, then you got to go back over and over. And then your guru passes, and then you're lost. That's one of the problems with following just a single lineage. Although I find most people find one that feels most at home for them. And the most successful meditators and people on a spiritual path who I've worked with, they might kind of have a general direction that is a lineage, but they're always experimenting to see what works better, and you measure the results. So I would say if your therapy is not getting through to your trauma, that's because you don't understand the nature of trauma and you think it's in your brain. One of the most important things that ever happened to me, my very first step into anything meditative, other than maybe like listening to some sounds, was I went to a 10-day transpersonal psychology workshop when I was 30 years old. I already made and lost millions, already been married and divorced. I've been in a bunch of different magazines in the world of tech, and I was kind of broken. I just did not know. I'm like, I've done everything that they told me, and I'm miserable, right? And I just couldn't take it anymore. So I go there, and you ever seen adults, grown adults, take wiffle ball bats and hit pillows and scream?
I've
Okay.
seen it. Yep.
As a tech guy, that is the stupidest thing I've ever seen in my life. Might have a little judgment there. So I'm in this room and there's all these people doing it. And I'm like, are you serious? This is dumb. But the sound of it just freaked me out. And I literally had a panic attack. I didn't know what that was. But I left, and the amazing therapist there, they brought me back in and they said, well, how about we just lay here? And they have like 3 therapists with pillows holding me down like a weighted blanket. And I did not know what was going on. And what was going on in me was the way I'm wired. If you hear people making those kinds of wailing sounds, you either go help them or you get the hell out of there.
Hmm.
Like, you do not just sit still. And this wise lady, Barbara van Dysen, the founder of the American Pre and Perinatal Psychology Association, it turns out, she looks at me and she goes, Dave, do you feel anything? I said, yeah, I'm angry. This is dumb. And she said, anything else? I said, my stomach feels a little weird. She goes, great. There's a name for that. What is it? She goes, it's fear.
Mm.
And I said, there's nothing here to be afraid of. It can't be fear. And she just laughed. She goes, fear's an emotion. It
Right.
doesn't have to be logical. And I'm like,
Right.
mind blown. And I'm like, well, why am I feeling fear from this? So there's all these people, you know, beating up bullies and just like letting go of rage and things like that. And that's a valid technique. And I finally tapped into mine, and I was really angry at 14th century French people. What the heck? So I'm pretty darn sure that's past life stuff. And I've got plenty of past life experience at this point in my life to believe that that is real. And even if you don't think that's real, believing in past lives is the only rational framework to work with. The reason for that is really straightforward. If you're wrong, you're not going to know it, right? If you're right, great, you'll have some attainment. But believing you get to come back equals less fear in this life, and less fear equals more peace. Because the opposite of the coin of fear is peace, and fear is not in the brain, it is in the body. And what I've learned through studying mitochondrial biology and neuroscience and advanced meditation practice and altered states work is that there's a logical order to operations if you understand the right assumptions. And this is original work, and it's stuff that I'm so grateful to be able to share after all this time in the biohacking world. If I do something like clap my hands, your brain knows it's some amount of time for the sound to make it through the internet and get to your ears. And you heard it because we perceive that. If I have electrodes on your head, your auditory cortex doesn't get that sound for 350 milliseconds. Who's in charge of that 350 milliseconds? It's not you. It cannot be you because the signal hasn't reached your brain, and your prefrontal cortex isn't going to be able to process that signal for almost a second. So
Mhm.
there's an invisible censorship window on reality, just like watching the Super Bowl live, except for the 8 seconds in case there's an unpaid wardrobe
Right.
malfunction. It's not live. It just looks live. So this is the window where the ego changes your perception of reality. And it does it based on programming. You're saying, well, where would this programming reside? It has to preside in the first part of the biology that interfaces with reality, and that is your mitochondria. Ancient bacteria that are a part of the very foundation of consciousness in my understanding of things. A lot of us talk about microtubules as being the quantum things. Guess who's aiming and programming the microtubules? The mitochondria clustered around them.
Mhm.
So these ancient bacteria, 2 billion years ago, moved into the cells that we identify as our cells, and they took over, and they never stopped. And they're running the operating system of life, and they run it really fast. And our brains are very slow. So what things do all life forms on the planet, single-celled life forms, politicians, forests, anything? Number one is fear. These are all F words. If something is scary, run away from, kill, or hide, and
Mhm.
do it before you can think. And the evidence for this, everyone listening, you've leaned on a hot stove accidentally once. And
Mhm.
none of us go, that hot stove is pretty hot. I think I should move my hand. You'd be really burned. Instead, your body jerked your hand away and you took credit for it. Look at me. I moved my hand so fast. Did you really believe you moved your hand? That is not the mindset of an advanced meditator. Your hand moved by itself because you were not a part of that decision process.